Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into something that could actually impact you, especially if you're interested in international study or the future of digital learning. We're looking at this article.
Right.
It's called How the U.S. Education Research Cuts Could Impact Global Learning. And
Yeah,
honestly, the story behind these cuts is pretty wild.
it is wild. We're talking about decisions made under the Trump administration
Okay.
involving Elon Musk's Doge team. And they essentially wiped out a ton of funding for the Institute of Education Sciences.
Wow. Okay, so the IES,
Yeah, the IES.
for those who aren't familiar, what did they actually do?
Right.
And why should we care, even if we're not in the U.S.?
Okay, so the IES was basically like the backbone of education research in the U.S. They were responsible for gathering and analyzing data on like everything you can think of,
Okay.
from student performance to educational trends to how effective different teaching methods were, even learning technologies. So think of it like their research really helped shape different policies and programs,
Right.
not just in the U.S., but internationally as well.
So their research had a global impact.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you give us like a specific example of how that worked?
Sure. So let's say you're a student in another country and you want to study in the U.S.
Okay.
You might have used IES data to compare different U.S. universities, see how good their programs were, or even just figure out your chances of getting a scholarship.
Right.
Their research basically provided this level of transparency and insight that was super valuable for both students and institutions all over the world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So almost $1 billion in funding gone.
yeah, just like that.
What are like the most immediate consequences of that?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is just the loss of data on U.S. schools.
Right.
Without the IES doing these big assessments and studies,
Yeah.
it's way harder to figure out how good different programs actually are.
Makes sense.
And this lack of reliable data could make people hesitant to study in the U.S.
So it's not just about losing information.
Right.
It's about the consequences of that.
Exactly. Students might think twice about studying in the U.S. if they can't easily compare programs or assess their chances of success.
And it's not even just international students, right?
You got it.
Like families who are thinking about sending their kids to the U.S. from other countries.
Totally. Without this data, it's a really tough decision.
Yeah, it seems like these cuts
Yeah.
have created some kind of information vacuum.
Yeah, you did say that.
It's leaving a lot of people in the dark.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just choosing universities.
Okay.
The IES was also super involved in researching and developing new education technologies,
Right.
especially in digital learning.
Okay.
And, this is relevant to everyone, no matter where you are.
I was going to say, this is where it gets really important for our listener.
Absolutely.
We're all interested in what's new and cutting edge in ed tech.
For sure.
And it sounds like the IES was right at the forefront of all that. So what happens to that research now? Does it just stop?
A lot of it has been disrupted, unfortunately.
Oh.
The article even mentions this program that was focused on developing digital tools for math skills that just got shut down
Really?
because of these cuts.
That's so sad. A promising math program just gone.
It's really disheartening, and this is just one example.
Okay.
But it highlights this broader concern that innovation in digital learning tools could slow down. And not just in the U.S., but globally.
It's not just about data. It's about hindering progress
Exactly.
in a field that has the potential to totally change education worldwide.
Yeah, the impact goes way beyond just losing information.
Wow.
It's about stopping the creation of tools and resources that could benefit everyone.
This is definitely a lot to think about.
It is.
A lot of consequences to these cuts.
For sure.
But I want to shift gears for a second and focus on solutions.
Okay.
The article, thankfully, doesn't just focus on the negative.
Right.
It also offers some paths forward.
It does, and I think exploring those is super important.
For anyone who's feeling concerned about the future of global education.
Definitely. And digital learning as a whole.
Exactly.
All
So let's get into those solutions.
Sounds good.
When we come back.
All right.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the challenges, but now let's dive into some solutions.
Yeah.
The article mentions looking beyond those U.S.-centric rankings
Right.
when choosing a university. What are some other resources that we can look at?
Yeah, so there are a couple of good alternatives.
Okay.
One is the QS World University Rankings,
Okay.
and that one takes a much broader view. They're evaluating universities all over the world
Gotcha.
based on stuff like academic reputation, employer reputation, research impact,
Okay.
and even international faculty and student ratios.
So it's not just relying on the U.S. for all that data.
Exactly.
What was the other ranking system you mentioned?
The other one is the Times Higher Education World University Rankings.
Okay.
And they use kind of a different method. They're focusing more on teaching research, knowledge transfer, and international outlook.
Interesting.
They actually gather data directly from universities, too,
Wow.
which can be a lot more accurate than just relying on public info.
So by looking at these global rankings, students can compare apples to apples.
Yeah.
Even with this lack of data from the U.S.,
Exactly.
it seems like a pretty valuable tool.
It is.
But what about funding?
Right.
With fewer scholarships coming from U.S. institutions, how can students afford to study internationally?
That's a great question, and it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But the good news is there are tons of scholarship opportunities outside the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For example, Canada has become a huge player in international education.
Interesting.
They offer all kinds of scholarships for students from all over the world.
Wow.
And their universities are really well regarded. Plus, the cost of living can be lower than in the U.S.
So Canada sounds like a great option.
It is.
Are there any other countries that students should be looking into
Oh, yeah, definitely.
for scholarships and affordable education?
Absolutely. Australia is another really good choice, especially if you're interested in things like technology, engineering, environmental science.
Makes sense.
They have a great reputation for research and innovation.
Okay.
And their universities are attracting more and more international students these days.
So we've got Canada, we've got Australia. What about Europe?
Oh, Europe is awesome.
I was going to say they have amazing universities.
They do, and it's a gold mine when it comes to affordability.
Really?
A lot of European countries offer world-class universities that are super cheap or even free
Wow.
for international students.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like Germany, France, the Netherlands, Sweden.
Okay.
They're all known for their awesome education systems,
Mm.
and they're really welcoming to international students.
So even though the U.S. might be having some issues,
Right.
there's a whole world of opportunities out there
Totally.
for students who want to study abroad.
You just have to be open to new things and explore all the options.
I love that it's about embracing that global mindset
Yeah,
when it comes to education.
absolutely.
And speaking of global mindsets,
Yeah,
let's go back to digital learning for a second.
sure.
The article mentions that we should focus on supporting research and development
Right.
in our own regions
Yeah.
rather than just waiting for the U.S. to lead the way. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a brilliant idea.
Really?
Instead of waiting for the U.S. to do everything, we can take charge of innovation in our own communities.
Okay.
We can invest in local people, support edtech startups, work with researchers in our own countries
Gotcha.
to find solutions that actually fit our specific needs.
So it's like taking back control
Yeah,
of our own educational future.
exactly.
And by fostering that local innovation,
Right.
we can create these different and really relevant digital learning tools
Yeah.
that can cater to all those different learning styles and cultural contexts.
Exactly.
So the shift away from U.S. dominance
Right.
could lead to something even better,
It could.
a more vibrant, inclusive global ecosystem for digital learning.
It's pretty exciting to think about all the possibilities.
Now, before we wrap this up, I want to talk about alternative exchange programs.
Okay.
The article mentions a couple. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Sure. So one of the programs is Erasmus Plus.
Okay.
It's this European Union initiative that offers a bunch of opportunities for students, educators, institutions
Oh, wait.
to participate in exchange programs, traineeships, collaborative projects.
Wow.
It's an amazing way to get some international experience, learn new skills, connect with people from all over Europe.
So even if those U.S.-based exchange programs become harder to get into,
Right.
there's still other ways to have that cross-cultural learning
Yeah.
and collaboration.
Exactly.
What was that other exchange program you mentioned?
Oh, the other one is Australia's Colombo Plan.
Okay.
And that one's focused on promoting development and cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region
Gotcha.
through scholarships, fellowships, and training programs. So it's a really great option for anyone who wants to study or work in countries like India, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam.
It sounds like there's so many pathways for people
There are.
who are looking for that global education,
Yeah,
even with all this uncertainty around the U.S.
absolutely. It's all about being resourceful, exploring all the options, and embracing that adventure of learning in this crazy globalized world we live in.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it seems like while these cuts to the IES present challenges,
Right.
they also open some doors
Yeah,
to new possibilities.
definitely.
And they encourage us to think more creatively about the future of education.
I agree.
Before we move on to our final thoughts,
Mm,
I want to give you a chance to share your overall perspective
okay.
on these cuts and what they mean for global education.
Yeah, I think it's a real turning point.
Mhm.
The cuts to the IES kind of show this shift in the world of education research.
Okay.
And it could have some big implications for how we approach learning and innovation.
It sounds like you believe this situation could be disruptive,
Could.
but also transformative.
I do, yeah. The loss of data and the disruption of research are definitely worries.
Yeah.
But I also see this as a chance to kind of step back and rethink our priorities.
Okay.
Maybe explore new ways to work together
Hmm.
and ultimately build a global education system that's more diverse and resilient.
I love that perspective. Turning a potential setback into positive change.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you believe everyone listening can play a part in this
Absolutely.
and shaping this future.
Yeah, by staying curious, exploring new things, fighting for change, we can create a world where learning has no limits.
That's a great message to end on. So
Mhm.
to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, keep challenging the status quo, and remember the future of education is in your hands.
Well said. Until next time, keep diving deep.
All right, and we're back for our final thoughts. We've talked about a lot today, from those IES cuts to all those alternative paths for global learning. It seems like this situation has both challenges and opportunities.
It definitely does. And as we wrap up, I think it's good to think about what this all means. What happens when one country's influence on research and all that starts to fade?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. We've talked about all those resources and programs, but what about the bigger picture? Like, what does this mean for global education overall?
Well, one thing that could happen is a more decentralized and diverse global education system. Imagine if knowledge and innovation weren't just coming from one place, but from all over the world.
That would be amazing. Like a more interconnected global learning community where every region can contribute.
Exactly. We could see more research and development coming from parts of the world that haven't really had a voice before. New ideas, new approaches to learning. It would totally change things.
It's like a global brain trust where everyone brings something to the table.
Hmm.
And with digital learning breaking down borders, the possibilities for collaboration are huge.
Absolutely. This could be what pushes us to move away from that old way of doing things and embrace a more inclusive approach.
So instead of seeing these cuts as a bad thing, we can see them as a chance to rethink how we do things and build something even better.
Yeah.
It's a chance to create that global learning community that's more equitable, more innovative, more interconnected.
Exactly. And I think everyone listening has a part to play in this.
Mm.
By staying curious, exploring all those possibilities, and advocating for change, we can create a world where learning truly has no limits.
That's a perfect note to end on. So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep challenging the status quo. Remember, the future of education is in your hands.
Well said. And that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.